Um, hey, just to introduce myself. My name is Joe. I'm the pastor of Acts Collective College Church. This is my family. Um, 3 girls. I've always wanted a son, but this is what God has blessed me with, and I am so thankful for them. Sometimes when they run around, they act like boys, so I get my fill from that too, so that's cool. Hey, so just wanted to welcome everyone from just whatever your background is, whether you've gone to church your whole life or whether you've never gone to church or maybe haven't gone in a while. Just really wanted to welcome you. We just wanted to create a space where you can ask big questions of life, as well as to connect with other people. If this is the first time that you're coming to church or just wanted to kind of commend you for your courage. I know that's a little bit hard to kind of step into that space, and even the worship time in the beginning, I remember talking to a friend who I brought to church for the first time, and he was like, dude, that was like Jesus karaoke. I was like, yeah, I guess that's kind of what it's like. But yeah, so just, anyway. So we're also part of a network of churches, actually. So our network of churches, we started in Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and then since we've expanded to about 70 campuses across the U.S. and then 7 countries internationally. So just to kind of intro our network a little bit, wanted to show this 90-second kind of teaser video, all right? So let's watch this.
For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power of God for salvation to all who dare believe it. So we share in suffering. We fight like a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Turning away from youthful passions to truth and compassion, students in college gathering together, losing our lives because we've got all the gain. To train up and keep this chain going by making disciples till revival breaks out once more. Because you've got just one life. What are you gonna do with it?
All right, nice. That was a network-wide video, but I feel like most of the clips are Irvine. I think that's because Jermaine is an awesome video editor, so. So we love doing things together with our other network churches. For example, this Saturday we have a San Diego trip that we're going to go to, and I'll teach you that game. It's called Sumo. It's really fun. But we're going to kind of combine with our San Diego church for that. We have winter retreats that are SoCal-wide, and then we have a winter conference this winter also that's nationwide with all of our churches, but only juniors and seniors and up can go. So sorry, freshmen and sophomores. All right, so and then before we get started again, I know I said this last week, and people get sick of me saying this, but for the benefit of people who did not come last week, we're on a lot of different campuses, and there's different stuff written about our church online and stuff like that. To be sure, we're not a perfect church by any means, but I guess my appeal would be just to find out for yourself, because a lot of the stuff that's kind of written there is just false, I guess. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience of people talking behind your back. That's like the worst, right? If there's anything that you want to talk about, like we love talking about stuff. Like Irene and I are always available for office hours if you guys want to talk about stuff like that. So, and also just to let you know, there's actually a lot of good press about us out there too. Okay, so it's not just like the comment section in Wreck-It Ralph 2, I think it was, right? But we have a lot of different ministry leaders and partners that we partner with pretty regularly. Ralph Moore, one of the legends of church planting, has done like a series about our church on his podcast. Jeff Christopherson, he's the founder of Send Network, which is the largest church planting network in North America. So he's been at our church multiple times, and he knows our leadership really well. JP Moreland, one of the kind of like legends of apologetics. He's actually stayed with members of our church for several months during a time of depression for him, and he writes very like positively about our church too. So just as they say, don't believe everything you read on the internet. All right. So okay. So our church is called Acts Collective College Church because we're a church that's focused on college students, and we like to base ourselves after the first church in Acts 2. It's the model church. It's a family that's on mission. And we really hope that we can become your spiritual home. I think there's a lot of good churches here in Irvine. So, wherever you make your spiritual home, our hope is that you will grow wherever you go. And for us, we love to invite people over to our home. So actually, all the new students, you guys are welcome to come over to our place tonight. We are making Korean barbecue because sometimes we do that for welcome night, but we didn't do that for welcome night. So we thought, let's do it for our house tonight. So we got, I think, 50 pounds of meat. I'm not a freshman anymore, so I can't eat all of that by myself, all right? So I need you guys to come and help me out with that, okay? So, all right. Does anyone recognize this skyline? It's a little bit harder because I didn't put the iconic pictures in here, but anyone? So this is New York City, okay? New York City, yeah. Empire State Building's not in there, stuff like that. But this is actually a view that I saw pretty regularly. I grew up in New Jersey, right across the river, Hudson River, and so I would see this on a regular basis. So I just want you to discuss with like the person next to you, just for like 30 seconds, what words or emotions kind of come to mind as you look at like a big city skyline. Okay, go for it. All right, so for how many of you is like the big city, like that's where I want to go, that's where I'm headed? You guys came to UCI for a reason, I guess, huh? You like the flat green. Okay, cool. All right, so so like I said, I grew up right next to this, and basically everybody's goal in New Jersey is to work in the city. So that was sort of like kind of how I grew up. There's a famous cemetery called Calvary Cemetery. It is the biggest cemetery in the U.S. Actually, 3 million graves here, and there's a lot of famous shots of it kind of overlooking the skyline. Okay, so now I want you to discuss what feelings or thoughts kind of are evoked as you look at this contrasting picture. All right, go for it. All right, let's gather together again. So there are certain events for every generation where they say that everybody remembers where they were. For your generation, maybe it's COVID, like shelter at home. Like you will never forget that, right? So I'll never forget this one day, my senior year of high school. It was a typical fall day. By the way, East Coast fall is amazing. It's the best. California does not have seasons. It has slightly warmer and slightly colder, right? But went to my molecular biology class. Probably we were covering mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, right? Yeah, okay, so you all remember that. Maybe it's, okay, so suddenly, someone bursts into the classroom and yells at us and tells us to turn the TV on and runs out. We turn on the TV, and this is what we saw. And it took some time to register what we were looking at. Is this a joke? Is this a hoax? Like, what's going on? The first plane hit the tower, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The second one about 15 minutes later. And that whole day, we were stuck in our seats watching the news. It was a shocking day. About 5 minutes after we started watching, most of my classmates started to scramble to try to call their parents. A lot of them actually worked in Manhattan or near that area. But nobody could get through because half of New York was trying to call everyone else. This event shook the nation. For many people, myself included, it made us feel fundamentally unsafe. These towers, and also the Pentagon, which was hit that day, represented sort of the height of American power, both military and financial. And these terrorists came and hijacked planes and destroyed that symbol. The people who worked in the Twin Towers, I mean, the rent there, these were the top companies in the world, and the people who worked there were the top executives in the world. And yet, it was all crumbling down. If they are not safe, what about the rest of us? Shortly after those attacks, actually, there was a huge rise in those going back to church. As for me, I remember distinctly thinking, what am I doing with my life? What is the purpose of my life? What if I spent my whole life climbing the corporate ladder and I got there? I got to the height. I even worked at the Twin Towers, let's say. Then what? And I began to think, what does it mean to live a meaningful life? I wanted to make sure that I live a life well lived. So my hope for you is that you will thrive in college and in life. In John 10, Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This is Jesus' desire for you, is to have an abundant, thriving life. I think one of the crucial aspects to that is to figure out your purpose, right? What are you living for? What does a meaningful life look like? So I wanted to share a story from the Bible. It talks about purpose and the thing that often defeats that purpose, all right? So it's from Luke 12, and it starts here in verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, so they're talking to Jesus, okay? So Jesus is teaching as he often does, and he's in a crowd. Someone in the crowd says, Jesus, I have a question, okay? So someone in the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Okay? Like, inheritance is a big deal, could be a lot of money, and actually a lot of family fights happen because of inheritance. So here's another example of that. And there was a dispute between someone and his brother. Tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. But he said to him, so Jesus said to him, Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you? And he said to them, Take care, watch out, be careful, and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life. Every so often Jesus drops like this incredibly powerful sentence, right? One's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. So right away, Jesus tells us what our life's purpose is not. It's not about the abundance of possessions. And I think we all know this is true, actually. Like, money can't make you happy. Like, we kind of know that, right? But the thing is, very few people actually live consistently with this truth, such as the person asking this question. Like, here he is, he comes to Jesus, and of course, Jesus' reputation precedes him, because by this time, he's a great teacher, great healer, amazing person. He's got this chance. He gets up to him, and he's like, I can ask him one question. If you could ask Jesus one question, what would it be? Like, you had an audience with Jesus himself, and you could ask one question, what would that be? Well, here's what this guy asks. Hey, how do I deal with inheritance? Okay? This guy totally blew it. Like, why would you ask that kind of question out of all the questions that you could ask Jesus? So Jesus says, hey, like, your life is not about your inheritance. Your life is not about the abundance of your possessions. But he kind of knows that he doesn't quite get it, so he tells a story, right? And Jesus' stories are amazing. It's his parable. So let's read this parable. Told him a parable, saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. Land of a rich man produced plentifully, right? In a society where many were farmers. I think this is something they would understand. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. This is like the best problem you can have as a farmer, right? Like, your land was so plentiful that you don't even have room to store it. So he's like, okay, I don't even have a place to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns, I will build larger ones, and there I will store all of my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul. I don't know how many of you guys talk to yourself, but which is cool. It's fine. It's fine. I talk to myself too internally, not externally, but I've met a lot of people talk to them externally. Soul, yeah, whatever you call yourself, right? You have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Now, this parable is often called the parable of the rich fool because it's about a rich man and because of the verse that comes next in verse 20. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. So this story reminds me of a bumper sticker that I used to see in the day that was really popular. I don't see this much anymore. The one who dies with the most toys wins. Usually it was sort of on a fancy car driven by older people who are going through a midlife crisis of some sort, right? It's called the parable of the rich fool again because he's rich, but God calls him a fool. And I think that's a shocking part of the story, right? Like this word here is a shocking part of this story because actually on the face of it, this guy is really awesome. He's incredibly industrious. He's a good investor, good planner. He knows what to do, right? First of all, he farmed well enough to produce this bumper crop, right? And then he's got a plan. Well, this is my issue. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear down my barn. I'm going to build larger ones, right? Probably already has a surplus measured out. Maybe he's got the phone numbers of all the contractors that are already coming up, right? It's like the guy who sort of puts his seed money in the right startup, right? Then it goes IPO, and suddenly he's got a lot of money. He's like, oh, I already know where I'm going to reinvest all of this stuff, right? He's sort of a good planner. Now he has ample goods laid up for many years so that he can eat, relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Some of you probably know people like this who have just exceeded in life with the abundance of possessions. And now they are, according to their Instagram, relaxing, eating, drinking, and being merry. God calls him a fool. Why? Because I think it has to do with how he answered this question. What shall I do? What shall I do? He answers it with a flurry of activity, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Why does he do all of these things? What is his purpose? Well, he says this, soul. Soul. What am I going to use to satisfy my soul? And he says it's this. He says it's this. What do you think will ultimately satisfy you? In order to answer this question, you actually have to ask another question, which is, who are you? Who are you? If you want to answer this question, what do you think will ultimately satisfy you? You have to answer this question. What does it mean to be human? If you don't understand your essence, who you are, there is no way that you're going to know what will satisfy you. You have to know who you are. I don't know if you've ever had pets before, but it's very important, I learned when I had fish, to know what kind of fish they are. Because I gave some fish things that did not satisfy them properly. And I will leave it at that. And I discovered I need to know what kind of fish I have, right? Who are you? What does it mean to be human? To know what will satisfy you, you have to know who you are. There's two viewpoints to this. It's human identity that I'd like to summarize like this. Are you a stomach or a soul? Are you a stomach, only your flesh and appetites? Your fleshly appetites. If all that exists are physical things, then this guy has won big time, right? Like he has everything that he needs to satisfy his stomach. Whatever he desires, he can get it right away. I want drink, I get drink. I want food, I get food. I want experiences, I get experiences. I can afford all of those things, and I'm going to use that to satisfy my stomach. Or are you a soul? Is there something deeper inside of you, deeper than your body, deeper than your fleshly desires? Because we think about satisfying this, I think this is how the treadmill of modern life has developed. And you guys are well on that treadmill. You know exactly what that treadmill is like. I don't know when you started studying for the SATs, okay? The almighty acronyms that rule your life: SAT, ACT, AP, GPA, BA, BS, MD, JD, PhD, the treadmill of modern life. And you guys did really well. Congratulations for getting into UCI. Don't worry if you got rejected from another school. It's okay. As UCI loves to remind us in different banners across campus, you know, it is one of the top 10 public schools in the US, right? Great job. And so, like, you had to be pretty successful to get here. Well, what's next? Okay, yeah, there's like all these classes coming up, right? You've only had 2 days of classes so far, but man, it's stressful, all the stuff that you got. And then the next quarter, and the next quarter, and the next quarter. Guess what happens when you get a job? Well, you got to keep going. 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 So it turns out that this person's question is actually very modern, right? Like, who am I? What am I going to be filled with? What am I going to be filled with? I think I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I think we all know that we're more than our bodies. I think we just intuitively know that. You know, if you know someone, or if you are yourself physically disabled somehow, does that make you any less of a person? Right? No, it doesn't. Because there's something inside of you that's of eternal value and worth that's much more higher than that. The things that we value actually most in life are the deeper things in life. A loyalty of a friend who's been with you through thick and thin, a soldier who sacrifices for his country, the unconditional love of a mother, right? These kinds of things. Up until a few years ago, until about 6 years ago, before I became a pastor and kind of came down to Irvine, I was working at Apple Computer as a software engineer, and that was a transformative time in the company, because when I started there was when the iPhone was released. Okay, so it was 159th most valuable company in the world at that time. And then in the next like 10 years, it became the most valuable company in the world, right? Because of the iPhone, basically. So it exploded in value. I saw the parking lot transform, okay? So this is the Apple Park. I saw the parking lot transform when I started there. Mostly it was Toyotas and Volvos, okay? A couple years later, mostly Beamers and Benzes. And then it was Teslas. And then the Ferraris and the Lambos started coming in. Like, every day was like a car show in the parking lot. It was like absolutely ridiculous. Actually, I had my manager, he tied his car purchases to the stock price. Basically, every time it went up 100, he would get a new car. That was sort of how he... Eat, drink, and be merry. So you have laid up for yourself ample goods. My coworkers pretty much had everything they ever wanted. But it did not satisfy their souls. It did not. I remember the shocking conversation I had with one of my coworkers who was sort of a rising star in the company. You know, there are guys who are smart, and then they're the guys who are you're just upset at them because they don't study hard, but they do really well. You know what I'm talking about, right? He was one of those guys. He was just stellar. He was just amazing. He started at a certain place, and then he just boom, 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 boom. Every project he turned to, he touched, like turned to gold. Within like a year and a half, he became a manager, and then he's like on his way to become a director. He was super fit. He did Ironmans all the time. He had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, like just like a Gerber baby kid, you know. Everything was looking up for him. His wife was a lawyer, I think. We had lunch one day. Usually we have it with our whole team, but turned out that day was just him and me. And then we're just talking. He knew that I was involved in campus ministry. And so we just started talking about God. He used to be Catholic, but then he just kept asking me questions about that. And it turns out he had become an alcoholic. And he said, I do not know why. He could not explain why every day when he went home, he would drink himself. I don't understand. He himself did not understand. He said, everything's great for me, but I cannot get rid of this gnawing feeling in my soul that something is missing. And the way he dealt with that was by drinking. He was kind of half depressed. Another one of my coworkers, like awesome dude, he was so fun to be around. His highest vision in life was the 3-day weekend that he got to build Lego sets. That's what he looked forward to. He said, you know what, I've remodeled my kitchen 12 times already. I'm sick of remodeling my kitchen. And he's like, I've been to the vacations. They're boring now. Now what he looks forward to, and he does a time-lapse video. He puts his phone on the windowsill for 3 days, and he records himself building one of those crazy Lego sets. They're actually pretty cool, those Lego sets. Really amazing, yeah. At the same time, my feeling was, dude, you were made for more than this. You were made for more than this. Why is it that we can have all of our creature comforts met and still be profoundly unfulfilled, restless, lonely, depressed? Why is it that people living in some of the richest areas in the U.S., I used to live in the Bay Area, right next to there is Marin County, has one of the highest suicide rates in the nation? Why is that? Could it be it's because life does not consist in the abundance of possessions? That we are more than a stomach with physical needs, but a soul with spiritual needs. You cannot feed your soul, which is spiritual, with things that are physical. Of course you need physical things. You need to eat and drink to survive. But if you have a soul, your soul also needs to be fed in order to survive. Part of this man's folly is that he thought that his soul could be fed by physical things. Your soul can never be fed by physical things. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about identity, like who we are in this world. And I think we'll kind of explore this idea some more. The rich man in the story, like we mentioned, he's an incredible investor, great long-term planner. Long-term planning, by the way, is a wise thing to do. You should plan long-term. You should figure out your quarter plan. You should know when your midterms and finals are, and all of that. Okay, so I highly recommend that. It's good. It's good for you. And his time horizon, right? His time horizon was many years, right? He thought ahead many years. How many years do you think that would be? Maybe 3 to 15, something like that, right? He's got a 3 to 15-year plan. The problem is that this was not long enough. He's a good long-term investor, but his time horizon was still too short. Because what if your soul is eternal? If your soul is eternal, then your time horizon, your planning should extend to eternity. I want to plan my life considering eternity. What's ironic is that what distracted him was all of his temporary worldly success. Sometimes being really good and successful at something will distract you from what's eternally important. Questions of who am I? What is the purpose of my life? Is there a God? And if so, what is he like? Those are the questions that you need to ask in order to live out an eternal time horizon versus just the next few years. But these questions got very little attention in his life. What got the attention? All the stuff that he needs to do right now, right now, right now, right now. Just like you guys, fall quarter. There's a million things I'm sure you have to do. My to-do list is just blowing up. Every time I look at it, I get stressed. I talked to someone who said, I don't even do a to-do list because it stresses me out. But then every time he thinks about how he doesn't have a to-do list, that stresses him out. So he's stressed out either way, right? There's a lot of things that demand your attention. I think the question you have to ask is, what is your time horizon? Are you living for the next 10 weeks? Or are you living for the next 10,000 years and considering eternity? Because here's the thing, you don't always have later, right? God said to him, yeah, you've got this nice 10-year plan, but death is coming. Tonight, your soul is required of you. Blaise Pascal, he was an amazing philosopher, mathematician. He had this graphic parable to illustrate how we often do not think about death. He talks about, he analogizes life to a party, okay? There's a party, there's a band playing, everyone's having fun, everyone's drinking, it's a great time. And then suddenly, a monster comes into the party, okay? Monster just suddenly like rips his way into the party. Sorry, this is a little graphic. This is Blaise Pascal's words, not mine. He grabs someone, mauls them to death, and then drags them out of the party. And then everybody in the party is silent, shocked, like what just happened? And then a couple minutes later, the band starts up again, and everybody goes back to normal. And then a couple minutes later, the monster comes back in, grabs someone, mauls them to death, and then drags them out. And the same thing happens. Everyone kind of shocked. And then the band starts up again, and they just go about their business. Even though, one by one, everyone's being taken by the monster. So you get the parable, right? Monster's death. It will come for everybody eventually. I did not watch this movie. I didn't know Barbie was so deep, man. They were inspired by Blaise Pascal. It's amazing. So that's kind of, right, like the punchline here, like, man, death is coming, and we have to prepare for eternity. And if it is true that you have a soul, and if it's true that there is a God, how are you going to plan for your life? I shared this verse during Youth Center Welcome Night as a verse that changed my life when someone shared this to me. Because, here it says, so what are we to do? Like, do not do this, right? Don't lay up for yourself treasure, but be rich towards God, right? Be rich towards God. So Matthew 6:19 talks about laying up for yourselves treasure, right? It says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, right? Do not spend all of your time building larger barns, right, to figure out where to store your crops. Do not spend all of your time figuring out how to get the next 3 letters added to your resume. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where it will last for eternity. It will last for eternity. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This verse changed my life because I started to think about, what is my purpose? What do I want to live for? Where are my treasures? According to the Bible, what are the only things that are eternal? It's God and its people. It's God and its people. That's it. Which is why the great commandment, right? The great commandment. When people come up to Jesus and say, how do you summarize the Bible? Like, what was the great commandment? And Jesus says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. The only 2 things that are eternal: your relationship with God and the love that you have for other people. So after I read this, I said, I don't want to live my life for something where when my life and my soul is required of me, it's all gone. I want to live my life for things that will last for eternity. I want to live my life developing my relationship with God and loving people. So ever since, that's what I've been doing, or trying to do um, when I can. Um, every year, I get to meet new students. So I love college ministry because it's a time when like your life can change, the trajectory of your life can change. Ever since I graduated, I've always gone back to the college campus to meet college students because I want to give my heart, my life, my time. I want to invest in things that are eternal. I am blessed because every year of my life, I've been able to lead someone in Christ. Really, it's not because of what I've done. It's just I put myself out there, and God uses me. God can't use you if you don't put yourself out there, right? And ask to be used by Him. I've developed relationships over the years that I never, ever would have thought that I had as a freshman in college. As a freshman in college, I was pretty introverted, and I just cared about my friends, honestly. Like, it's just me and the homies, and that's it. And my life was really small. Through the years, I've developed so many relationships over time. I was texting with someone a couple days ago who's actually class of 2018, so David Choi's peers. He just got engaged, so he was telling everybody about it and kind of reminiscing about college and different people I was texting with. And then my group of friends, the guys that I graduated with, we now have a 20-plus year relationship where we get to meet up all the time, and we carry each other through life. We carry each other through life's ups and downs. I don't know why, but for some reason, amongst my group of friends in college, like a lot of them have kids who have special needs. One of my best friends, both of his kids have CoQ6 genetic mutation. One of them has sort of failure to thrive, so he has a really tough time eating. Another one has autism. And we go through life together. And now to think about man, what does an abundant life look like? It looks like a life that's connected with God and connected with people. And I could not have imagined my life like that as a freshman in college. For the Christians in the room, for those who know Jesus, here's my appeal to you, and we're just about wrapping up, but be rich towards God. Be rich towards God. Invest your life, your time, your energy into eternal things, into the things that God cares about, into a relationship with Him in the Word, in prayer, and into your relationships with other people. At the end of the day, all of the money that you ever make, it will be gone. It will be gone. Now, please hear me right. I'm not saying you should take all of your books and just burn them and just, run in Aldrich and say, Jesus, I love Jesus. That's not what I'm saying, okay? Study hard, okay? I studied hard. You can totally do that while still investing your life in deeper things. And so, be rich towards God. I don't know what high school was like for you. I don't know what this summer was like for you. But I know the quality of my soul when I don't invest my life in God. And I know the palpable difference when I'm in His Word regularly and I'm in fellowship with other Christians regularly and I'm giving myself to others, right? Be rich towards God. There's a lot of things that we offer because I think doing things on your own is really, really hard. And so if you want to do that with other people, we're going to have a table outside for spiritual growth, doing DT together, devotion together, reading God's Word together, just living life. So all of those things. If you want that, it's available for you. For those who are exploring, not Christian, here's my challenge to you. Figure it out. Is there a God? And if so, what is He like? That is the fundamental question of life. That is the fundamental question of life. You cannot know your meaning unless you settle that first. If it is the case that there is no God, then perhaps Camus and they're all right in that we don't have any ultimate purpose. You can make up whatever you want, or however absurd it may be. But if there is a God, then our purpose can only come from knowing what he said. And so that would be my appeal to you. Don't be like this guy who said, I'll figure it out later. You know how procrastination works, right? Later becomes later still. And it always is later. You don't always have later. Use this quarter to really figure it out. And you could do that either, of course, through continuing to just hear about the Bible, or a course that we have called Course 101, which kind of goes over all of that stuff. And if you're interested in that, just talk to someone around you. But that would be my appeal to you, to figure it out. To be honest with you, when I came in as a freshman, I was not sure about my faith. I grew up going to church, but I totally recognized that it was not deep in my soul. I went to church because my parents went to church, and it didn't extend much past that. And then I thought, if I'm going to live for something, I need to know whether this is true or not. Not like it makes me feel good, but like, is it true? Is it actually true? And so I started to search for the truth of Christianity. And I thought that science would prove that God is dead. That was my feeling. I was like, this is not going to end well. But I discovered that actually there's powerful scientific evidence for the existence of God. I thought that history would show that Jesus and the Bible were mostly myth. That's what I thought. But as I investigated, it turns out that actually the Bible, history and archaeology actually confirm a lot of the Bible. And I thought that the Bible was full of old, irrelevant stories. But I found that the more I heard and studied the Bible, it spoke directly to my heart and described who I was and my experience better than anything else I'd ever seen. Perhaps you will come to a different conclusion, and that's fine. But my appeal would be, figure it out. Investigate. It's worth the time to figure that out. So I just want to end with prayer, and maybe if the band can come up.